anyway, we're going to talk about proteins because that's one of the key parts of our hair course, which is coming up hopefully in May if the coronavirus situation is better. Now, if it's not better, we'll just have to postpone it. So it's definitely happening at some point. It's just when.
Can't we just get everyone in those hazmat suit things?
Yeah.
And we'll still do the course.
We could actually. Yeah, or we could just do it online. But that wouldn't be so fun. We could do it online.
Send out the packs of everything.
Send out
and
the
then
packs.
you do it on.
We could.
Online.
We could do it live.
Yeah.
We could be here, and then
Online
what if we get
tutorials.
sick? Oh, we're not going to get sick. We're bulletproof. Anyway, so protein. So Sam, as a hairdresser, had some questions, so I'll let him fire away, and then I'll do my best to answer you.
Right. Okay. So number one, is protein bad for your hair? Because as a hairdresser, I've been hairdressing for almost 20 years.
Yep.
And there's a lot of products out there which have variable or like variations of proteins in them. Yeah. And everyone always says, don't use that, don't use this. If you put too much protein in your hair's going to get brittle, it's going to snap off. And they say you can overload your hair with protein. So a lot of people nowadays are kind of staying away from products which mention the word protein.
Right.
But I was under the impression protein, keratin, those kind of things are good for your hair because it helps repair, rebuild, and so forth. So why does everyone have this like bee in their bonnet about proteins being
bad? Look, I think that's complicated, and I think the first point to note is that the hair is a protein. So lots of people won't necessarily realise.
So you don't like your own hair?
That's right. Well, people are a bit weird sometimes. So keratin is a protein, and the keratin in our hair is the same as keratin. Well, it's similar to the keratin on our skin. So we're all made of keratinized tissue. You can also find keratin in the beaks of birds, the wool of sheep,
fowl feathers.
Foul
That's where I
feathers.
get mine from
Exactly, that's right. So keratin is found in lots of different animals, and we do use it. So we extract it and we use it for cosmetics. So fowl feathers are fairly commonly used because the chicken industry is quite big. And I mean, chickens don't have to die to give you their feathers, but you know, you have to chase quite a few to get a few, I guess. So and you shouldn't take them out. You wait until they drop out naturally. Just go for a walk through the forest.
And wash them, blow dry them.
Wash them, blow dry. See, I wouldn't have done that. But anyway, so that's keratin. But there's not just one type of protein that we use in cosmetics. We use a lot more different things, and I think that's where some of the confusion starts.
So it's kind of. The way that I've always perceived it is there's different qualities of proteins, or like there's a different stage, like let's say out of 10 there's level 1, 2, 3 all the way up, and each one has a certain aspect of or a variable amount of protein it has in it. So this protein does that, this protein does that, and it all depends on what one you use for whatever it needs to be in the hair. Like, you know, keratin protein or hemp protein, all those things have different benefits.
They do.
So one would be good for that, but if you're using the wrong one, it's not going to do anything, is it?
That's true. So once we've established that the hair is a protein and that it's made a protein called keratin, we sort of get rid of the myth that protein is bad for the hair because the hair is protein. So then it's a case of, well, what kind of proteins are we putting on the hair and how are they getting to the hair? And then we've got these different layers. So we can have what I call whole foods. So, I mean, keratin is not a whole food. That's a thing that you get out of another animal, like I just said. But if you're looking at things like hemp, soy, silk, they're proteins that come from other sources.
How about rice?
Rice, you can have rice. And then we've got things like oats, spirulina even. We think we said hemp, wheat, silk, I said soy, even coconut, yes. So you can get, if you think of any food that you might eat to give you, you know, and you're looking at your nutrition and your protein, then that protein is potentially available for the hair as a whole food.
How about tofu?
Tofu protein.
I'm vegan, so
you can go with the tofu. Why not go with the tofu? Tofu is bean curd, so would that be soybean?
Yes. Soy protein. Yeah, I use that in one of my products.
So and quinoa is another one. I think we've seen quinoa protein. There's all sorts of things.
Shampoo.
So you have your whole food, which is literally where you take what nature gave you and you squish it into some kind of extract and just put that on. Then what you can do is you can take that and you can supercharge it by hydrolyzing it or breaking it down in a chemical reaction. So proteins are quite big globular chemicals, so they're quite big and bulky.
Yeah.
And if you imagine putting that into some kind of process, which is usually an alkaline heat, to break it down into what we call peptides, and then you can further break it down into its amino acids, and we call that hydrolysis. So breaking the bonds.
So is that like changing like the molecular structure, like making it smaller?
Yeah.
Let's say so.
Yeah.
It goes so the hair can absorb it through into the cuticle. So it goes
the cuticle and then the cortex.
Yeah, into the cortex like that, so which is what Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. So if you think the big proteins, the whole food can only go so far because they're all the amino acids, which is what we're trying to get at. Yeah. And that's where your things
chains, for the string.
The amino acids is what your keratin's made of. So you've got your cysteine is it called cysteine or cysteine?
I'll go with that one.
Whatever it is.
I'll have a pea, please, Bob.
Yeah. So we've got that amino acid, which is a really key one in human hair strength, and then all the other bits and pieces. So there's lots of different amino acids in the hair. And basically what you're doing is you're breaking that massive globular or structural or fibrous protein into smaller parts, which are either called peptides, which are short combinations of amino acids, or you're going all the way to the basic building blocks. It's a bit like if you built the Lego, Star Wars Falcon, and then I came along, the Millennium Falcon, and I came along and just kind of like took, the wings off and the top off and the bottom off.
I would call you a bully.
But that would be equivalent to me turning the Millennium Falcon into, say, peptides. But then if I took those parts, I know, you see where I'm going?
It makes sense to me.
Took those parts and then took apart all the Lego bricks, so that literally all you got left is all these different Lego bricks. That's equivalent to amino acids. And you could sort those Lego bricks out if you're really, really, I don't know.
So now a little bit of homework is go home, make a Millennium Falcon.
Take it apart in bits, and then there you go. You'll never forget.
Size, colour coordinate.
Exactly.
Everything.
And that's how it goes. So proteins can be broken down into peptides, can be broken down into amino acids. The reason why we do that in cosmetic science is because they're smaller, they're easier to penetrate into the hair. So that's one thing.
Because obviously you want it to go under the cuticle and into the cortex. So obviously by breaking it down, it goes small enough so it can slip in and then it can go and penetrate the cortex.
Yes.
But then if it's too big, it's not going to get under the cuticle, is it? So that's why you break it down and you change it. So it's like different. So I guess in a way, like conditioner, for example, balls of conditioner.
Something just happened. Someone just died. I think you were talking about.
Okay, so when you're talking about penetrating the hair, so like, with conditioner molecules, a lot of them are bigger, so they sit on the surface of the hair, isn't that right? And weigh
they can do.
Weigh the cuticle down so you don't lose your lipids, whereas something like a protein is small enough to be absorbed to go through the cuticle to get to the cortex of the hair to help repair it. So
and the cortex is where you've got your keratin fibres, which are all bound together. It's literally like if you take apart an electrical cable, or like the Harbour Bridge kind of cables, where there's lots of tiny fibres.
It makes sense.
And they all kind of get inside this thing, and then they're bigger and bigger, and you get more strength. So that's true. So a whole protein can only act like a conditioner, I guess, and sort of condition the outside. Whereas once you break it down, you've got more chance of it getting into the inside.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The more similar the amino acids are to what the hair needs, the more compatible it is, and the more you're kind of just restoring it or repairing it. But if you put in a protein source that's quite different to the hair, then the balance might be quite different, and you'll get different outcomes.
So to me, it still seems, because I use different proteins in my products for certain reasons, that to repair hair, to replace things and stuff like that. But I still struggle to understand why people are afraid of them. Because so far, if your hair's made up of protein, and keratin's a protein, rice is a protein, soy, all these things that only can do good for the hair. Why are they bad? Why are people thinking that? Is it like I said at the beginning? Is it like I've got a car, and it's unleaded? And I put diesel in it. It's still fuel, but it doesn't work because it's not the right one. So is that the same thing with hair? Like, I need keratin, but I'm using hemp. Or I need so and so, but I'm using A or B. Is that the reason why people find them wrong? Because do companies not know this, and they like a basic product range will just use that cheap protein, put it in there, and then we've got protein? Or
Yeah, well, all of the above, really.
If that makes sense.
No, it does. It's all of the above. So, so sometimes people choose a protein source because it's trendy. So, for example, that hemp protein sounds really cool right now, so let's just put that in. That doesn't mean it's bad, by the way. It just means that people might put it in and not necessarily think about how it's going to be formulated with. So it's just in there because it looks good on the label, and they might have Whole Foods because that's their brand.
Like everyone puts charcoal in everything.
Yeah, that was a thing.
Infused charcoal toothpaste, charcoal face mask, charcoal infused bristles on a hairbrush I've seen.
Yeah,
and
I've seen
like,
that. Yeah, I know. It's a bit weird, but people are weird and they're getting weirder every day.
I think that we're the non-weird ones.
We are.
We're the normal ones.
We are normal, completely normal. I keep telling myself that every morning.
My elbows.
I can't even do. Anyway, what I was going to say is, in terms of why some proteins go bad in the hair, it can be either them in the whole form or in the broken down form, and it can be because of the chemistry of the amino acids. So remember, they're the building blocks, they're the bricks. Some of those amino acids are going to be oil loving or oil attracting.
Yep.
Some of them are water loving, water attracting, and some of them are neutral. And those properties are pH dependent. So when you're saying, well, how come some products are bad and some products are good? Well, the level that the person developing it has gone into all of that chemistry, what they put with the ingredient, how much they use, and how often the product's going to be used, and in what way, like how long it's on the hair for, will all make a difference as to whether the protein in the product is going to do good, bad, or indifferent.
Okay.
And worst case scenario is you can have proteins that build up on the outside and make the hair a bit stiff and crunchy, even brittle.
Like so it will snap though?
Possibly, because what could happen is some proteins are really, they bind more moisture than your hair's used to, and you know how wet hair is less strong, it's weaker.
It's most fragile and the elasticity.
So if you've got a protein that's sort of building up on the hair and it's really substantive and it's kind of sucking moisture in, it might almost keep your hair swollen and a little bit weak.
Okay, now we're getting there. That makes sense.
So these things are all possible, and another thing is that protein, because the charge on the protein is down to the pH of the product, so how far the protein is away from what we call its isoelectric point, and that's the pH where it's neutral.
Yep.
So if you make a protein or the amino acids lower pH than their isoelectric point, they become cationic.
Yep.
And cationics are sticky, so they will stick to the hair. And when you were talking about conditioners before, conditioners usually have cationics in them, and they're just positively charged.
So they're positively charged,
and they stick to the outside of the hair and they coat the cuticle, which is what you want them to do to give you shine and whatnot.
So is there any specific proteins that you should look for in a hair product, and any that you should kind of stay away from?
I don't think it's as simple as that. I think you could literally use anything you like, a bit like when you're eating food. Everything's got its value. It's about how you apply it. So when I look at, that's why I've been sitting here with my list, because I can't remember all of this. It's in tiny writing, so I'm going to have to try.
But you take your glasses off to read it.
I do. It's because I'm getting old. I'm not as young as I used to be, obviously. Don't talk about it. But if you've got a really sort of water-loving, I'm just trying to find what is the worst case scenario, and I can't read my own writing, but hydrophilic, so keratin, for example, has about 34% hydrophilic or water-loving components. Coconut milk is 60, so almost double. So if you didn't want your hair to be super hydrated because you don't want the weakness, and your hair's already weak because it's been dyed or whatever, then coconut protein is probably the worst thing you could choose.
Yeah.
But that doesn't necessarily mean to say that you can't use coconut protein in that product. It means you'd probably balance it, use a little bit, because there might be reasons you want it. It might be a coconut product you're making, but you just go easy on it.
Infused with charcoal.
Infused with charcoal, that's right. Whereas there'll be other ones that are slightly different. So you can get something like, so if we want to find something that's more balanced to the hair.
Rice.
So rice, for example, has a hydrophilic or water-loving content of around 46. So it's still high compared to water, but not as high as coconut.
Is that why people use rice extract or bran extract in products for volume?
Oh, absolutely, because that can be the good thing.
Absolutely.
I'm getting very English. But if your hair's in really good condition and and it's very fine and you want to swell it up a little bit, then sure, you can use that. And wheat has the highest water binding capacity of any of them. So if they're not gluten-free, you can put wheat in them, in their shampoo.
Yeah, because if they're celiac, they wouldn't be able to use it, would they? Because they...
Yeah, well that's an interesting thing, sorry to cut you off there, but I'm not sorry, no. Celiacs will have a reaction when they ingest the gluten. If you put gluten products on the skin or hair, it won't necessarily cause a problem. It doesn't necessarily follow that way. It depends on their immune system and how far it goes in. But what generally happens is that people who are that have that much of a problem with something will just seek to avoid it because it's psychologically a problem. And that doesn't mean to say that it's only in the mind and not in the body. Of course, these things cross over, and you know, if you're worried about something, it can affect your body, and if you're a celiac and you use wheat products, you could actually end up with a reaction. So it's always best to avoid wheat if someone's a celiac, even though the risks from topical application are probably low. But in that case, you could probably go with coconut. And you maybe just use a little bit more. So there's all sorts of things, but then things that are more oil loving, so some of the amino acids with really good lipophilic properties might be a really good natural conditioner for people who don't want to use synthetic cationics. But don't forget, we've got the whole food, we've got the peptides, we've got the amino acids.
Where's the magnesium fountain?
All of that. Obi-Wan. All of that.
So would you say though, don't be scared of protein, just kind of understand it?
Yeah, I took the words right out of my mouth. Oh my god.
Genius. Just don't know where it comes from sometimes.
I don't know either.
Exercise the demons.
That is exactly right. So it's like with everything. I think it's, you know, you can be a bit creative with your protein source. No protein source is going to be perfectly balanced to the hair the way that keratin is.
Because that is what your hair is.
That is what your hair is. That is exactly right.
And so just on a quick point here, keratin, you can't get a vegan version of keratin that is as good as like Falfa's, can you? No, you can't. Because I've got a couple of products in my range, but I mean my range is registered with PETA for cruelty free.
Yes.
And I get my keratin from New Directions, which is all sustainably sourced. It's cruelty free. No chickens were plucked in. Stuff like
so it's basically a byproduct, rather than a farm thing.
But I've been looking for a vegan alternative, but there doesn't seem to be much, if anything.
All you could do from a scientific perspective is what we know the amino acids that make up keratin, and what we could do is we could synthetically make the amino acids, which is what happens anyway. So a lot of amino acids are made that way, and you could then pick them off the shelf in the proportions that you find in nature. So that is possible. So you could have keratin amino acids synthetically made, put together to replicate what we get in nature.
Would it be as good?
It probably wouldn't be.
Putting you on the spot here.
No, not necessarily. I'm just trying to think.
I've got some ingredients. You want to try and make it?
Yeah, let's do it now. You can do it in the microwave and a bit of hydrochloric acid, not hydrochloric, sodium hydroxide.
Oh, okay.
Do nature proteins. It's a hobby of mine.
Go Keratin in the Blue Mountains, everyone.
I know. And I'm up there more now because of this whatever, you can't even talk to people anymore.
The corona.
Yeah, my corona. I'm in my lab. Exactly. Yes. Would it be the same or not? Probably. So if you take whole keratin and you break it down to the amino acids, and then you do another pot where you've basically sorted out the same array of amino acids as in the hair, I don't think the hair's going to care. It's going to take what it wants. But the only downside with doing it that way is it's synthetic. So amino acids are synthetically made. They don't come from, they're not necessarily all natural, so then they're not classified as a natural ingredient. They're what we'd call nature identical, but synthetically made. As in, you know, I know it's a bit confusing.
How do you fit that on the back of a packet?
You can't. Well, you see, people want simple, and life isn't simple. And I, for one, think that the fun of life is in the detail. So that's about it, really. It's the devil is in the detail. So all these people who are dissing the protein, they just don't have enough detail in their brains. We need to feed it in with a little syringe.
It makes sense, because too much of a good thing
is bad.
Is bad. No, but you know what I mean. So it does make sense to that. Like, you know, if your hair is damaged, do you need protein, or do you need to make sure that you're not losing any more lipids? Like, I think it comes down to, like, when you're doing a hair appointment, for example, when we consult with people, we find out what they do with their hair, what products they use, you check their hair, you do an elasticity test, you do like all these kind of things, a porosity test. Then we decide what colour we're going to do, or we decide what products we're going to use. So surely people need to kind of be educated, because you don't always need protein in your hair.
Well, no,
you might
that's
need something else to resolve that issue, but people go straight to protein.
Yeah, and I think the main thing there is also to do with the person and their hair length. So I mean, you know more than I as a hairdresser that by the time your hair's been on your head a few years, it's picked up all sorts of
that my
trouble.
fringe gets really oily.
Your fringe does get oily, obviously.
Yeah, no, I mean, to me that totally makes sense. It's just because, you know, in all my life of hairdressing, travelling all around the world, you know, education and everything that I do, so many people always say to me they're scared of recommending products with protein.
Yeah.
And I've always been like, if they need it, there shouldn't be an issue to it.
Yeah. Look, I think if you pick the right protein and the right formula, you can never really have a bad go wrong with protein in your product. Where people go wrong is they don't understand the chemistry, the application and the dose, and even the time of application on the hair. So, you know, whether you're doing a rinse off or a leave on or a heat treatment or something like that, they're all going to make a difference.
Yeah.
And like I was saying, the length of the person's hair too. So by the time everybody's hair's, you know, a few years old, if they've got longer styles, they're going to be losing protein, especially in a hot country where there's a lot of UV, because you're just losing it to the environment. So, you know, to keep that strength and that length, then it's going to be a good thing.
Rhyming poet.
Oh my God.
You're just about to drop some bars then, weren't you?
That's right. I like I said to you, I
Spit some
write
bars.
poems and stuff, and it just comes out and flows.
I'm looking forward to hearing that. I want a poem about protein.
The next time we meet, I will have one. Okay. Wrap it up. Should we wrap it up? Thank you for watching. I've been Easy Foxy. And he's been Sammy... Sammy O.
Sammy Snakes.
See you next time.
Thanks.
Bye.